listening to the Life Edit Project podcast, where busy, ambitious high achievers get the tools they need to fight overwhelm and overthinking with balance, self-mastery, and a positive mindset. I'm your host, Elizabeth Burrows. I'm serving up bite-sized truth bombs in a judgment-free zone based on my perspective as a life coach, wife, mom, and recovering overachiever. We keep it real over here, which usually means some combination of insightful, entertaining, and a hot mess express. So, if you're looking for perfection, look elsewhere. But if you're still with me, let's dig into this week's episode. Good day, good people. It's great to have you back for another episode of the Life Edit Project podcast. As always, I've got a juicy conversation planned for us today, but first, I'm going to stop and celebrate. As of this recording, this podcast has received more than 100 downloads. Okay, actually, we're over 140 downloads, which feels amazing. Now, of course, I have no idea how well other new podcasts do in their first few weeks, but for this newbie right here who started from scratch, is doing it all by herself and learning as she goes, passing this milestone feels monumental to me. Now, I will say that I didn't have any particular expectations around downloads right? I hadn't created any particular timelines for how many downloads I should get by when. I just want to get this podcast in front of all the people so that some of them will listen. And when those people listen, some of them will realize that the thing they've been looking for exists, that the questions they've been asking have answers. And if I'm going to get in front of all the people, I've got to start somewhere, right? And 100 downloads, I think, is a pretty great start. It reminds me of that famous saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Maybe that's not the exact phrase, but you know what I'm talking about. So to me, 100 downloads feels like one of my first steps on this journey, and every step in the right direction is worthy of being celebrated. So whatever it is that you've been telling yourself it's too hard to do, too big, too far from where you are now, too unfamiliar, or whatever, just get started. Take the first step and celebrate yourself for moving forward. Okay. That's the pep talk of the day. Thanks to all of you lovely listeners for helping me get here. If you've been enjoying this podcast, if you've ever heard anything that's helpful or worthwhile from me, please consider rating and reviewing this show. 5-star reviews help this podcast become more discoverable, and they help new listeners know why they should give us a try. And if you'd like step-by-step instructions on how to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, which is where most of my listeners are, you can find those on my website at lifeeditproject.com/podcast. And of course, that link will be in the show notes so that it's super easy for you. I did get a 5-star review from another one of my listener bays, username cwash828. The review is titled, "So Good," with 3 exclamation points, and it reads, "Like a good cup of coffee you didn't know you needed. Truth, passion, and aha moments." Thank you for listening, cwash828, and thank you for taking the time to leave this amazing review. Okay, now let's get into today's topic. So the title of today's episode is "My Life is Great, So Why Do I Hate It?" And that might sound like a bit of clickbait, but it's not. This is a real feeling for lots of people. And I know because I've been there and because I've had the chance to coach many different clients who have wrestled with some version of this feeling. And it usually follows a story that goes something like this. You did what was expected of you, or you followed some sort of master plan. You achieved some type of expected result that you were going for on purpose. And when you did, you didn't end up feeling the way you expected to feel. And now you don't know what to do about it because you already followed the plan and the plan never covered this. Sound familiar? So this can show up in a lot of different ways and in a lot of different areas of life and even at different levels of intensity. You might feel this way about your career. So maybe you got a degree in a highly respected field and landed a, quote, good job. You know the ones I'm talking about. But even though the pay is good and maybe you're on a leadership track, you feel like a little piece of your soul dies every time you show up to work. Or maybe you felt like this about your family or your family life. So you found a nice, respectable partner, dated for an appropriate amount of time, and then got married. And while you get along well enough and there's no drama, it's not a bad relationship or anything, you're still waiting to feel like you've been swept off your feet. Or maybe you went ahead and started having kids because your mom really wanted grandkids and because all of your friends were having babies, right? But your maternal instinct never quite kicked in and you feel like you suck at parenting and you resent not being able to just take spontaneous weekend trips with your homies or even just sleeping in on a Saturday morning. Now, this is a confusing and quite frankly, an infuriating place for us high achievers to be because it's not an achievement problem. You've done what you were supposed to do. You've checked all the boxes, completed all the tasks, and hit all the targets. Your life looks good on paper, it just doesn't feel good in reality. And the more you do, the more you win, the higher you climb, the deeper you get, the less you want it, and the more dissatisfied you become. So why does this happen? How do we get here? And more importantly, what do we do about it? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to tackle in the rest of this episode. Buckle up. So here are a few reasons why you might be hating your seemingly wonderful, amazing, great, fantastic life. 1, you're chasing the wrong kind of success. So most of us go through large portions of our lives without ever stopping to question what success actually is. Instead, we just accept as truth whatever the people around us tell us success is. It might sound like getting good grades, athletic talent, money, home ownership, fashion sense, being thin, being curvy, being married, being a parent, being child-free, getting a good job, owning a business, being popular, being unique, being like everyone else. So, of course, this is not a definitive list of what people think success is, but it's enough of a sample size that I hope you notice 2 things. First, there is no universal standard. There is no universal standard of success. Because here's the thing about success. It's really, really personal. As in, the only person that gets to decide what success looks like for you is you. The other thing I hope you notice is that quite often, the way one person defines success is in direct conflict with how someone else defines success. So if you've never stopped to identify what success looks like and feels like for you, you might actually be working towards someone else's idea of success, and it's actually moving you away from the type of success that you want deep down inside. Let me give you an analogy. Now, bear with me. So let's say you live in a town where there's this famous hiking trail to the top of a small mountain, not like a huge mountain, not Mount Everest, a small mountain that offers a beautiful view of the area. And it's a tradition in your town that everyone takes the hike up the mountain as kind of a coming-of-age adventure. And there are lots of tourists that come and visit and hike the trail and take in the view. So let's imagine, though, that there's like this weird electromagnetic phenomenon that's happening on the mountain, and people can't use their phones to take videos or cameras. So you can't just do a Google search to get an idea of what the trail looks like. The only thing you know about the trail is what you hear from other people, right? What they tell you about it, what they tell you it looks like, where they tell you it is exactly, all of that. And one of the things you don't know, because you've never been, is that there's more than one hiking trail to get up this mountain. Some of the trails lead to the same end point, but some trails take you to completely different places on the mountain, and they may even offer different views. So it's your turn to hike up the trail, and your dad tells you that you're going to hike the trail and enjoy this view of a wonderful, huge lake, just like he did when he was your age. But you're not excited at all because you actually have a mild phobia of large bodies of water, and you never told anyone about it. So your dad has no idea that you're scared of lakes. And so he's sending you up the mountain to take in the view of this huge lake. Of course, this is not the way you prefer to experience nature, right? You're like, if I'm going to be out in nature, I want to be in forests and surrounded by trees. But you go on the trail and you start hiking along the path that your dad told you to that leads to the lake view. And the higher you go and the further you go down this trail, the fewer trees you see until you get to the top, and you're finally left with this endless view of water and not a single tree in sight. So you're disappointed, you're even terrified when you get there, and maybe even a little mad that you had to spend all this time and put in all this effort to get to a place that you really don't want to be. But on this same mountain, there's a completely different hiking trail that leads to a different side of the mountain, one that overlooks a breathtaking forest. It's there. The trail is open, it's accessible and available to you, but it takes you to the opposite side of the mountain from where the lake is. And so if you're spending all of your time following the path that your dad told you to follow, you can never get to the place that you actually want to be because it's going in the opposite direction. So sometimes you hate your wonderful life simply because you've been chasing the wrong kind of success. You've been going down a path that takes you the opposite of where you actually want to go. Okay. A second reason why you might be hating your seemingly amazing, wonderful, fabulous life is because you're trying to be someone other than yourself. So sometimes there's nothing wrong with what you're trying to accomplish or the end goal that you're trying to reach, but you're too hung up on who you have to be in order to get there. You know exactly what kind of success you want, but maybe the only examples of success you've seen are from people who are very different from you. So maybe, for example, success to you looks like financial independence. But the only financial role models you've seen are old white men that have published bestseller books that are 30 years old that you can find in the large print section of your local library. But you happen to be a young Black woman, so your role models are very different. And so you end up thinking that who you are, your race, your gender, your background, your personality, everything that makes you you that isn't an old white man is all an obstacle that's in the way of your financial success. Or maybe, let's say you've known since you were 10 years old that you want to be an archaeologist, but you've been told that archaeologists aren't like you, that you're too loud or you're not serious enough to make it in that field. Right? And so you try to be less loud, you try to be more serious so that you can be a successful archaeologist, right? Because this happens. Sometimes we get feedback that we're too much of something or not enough of something else to have the kind of success that we want. And we internalize that, and then we spend lots of time trying not to be ourselves so that we can be successful. And when you spend all that time believing that you, the way you are right now, are not worthy of the success that you want, you won't believe you're worthy of success even when you achieve it. So sure, you can make all that money or become the most celebrated archaeologist in history or reach whatever other outward marker of success there is, and you can still hate your life because you never get to enjoy all of that success as your authentic self. The success you reach when you're not being yourself becomes a trap, a prison of your own design that gets stronger and reinforced with every new accomplishment. And that kind of sucks. Okay, a third reason why you might be feeling like you hate your wonderful, fabulous, beautiful life might simply be because you're disconnected from the experience of it. So I don't care how good your life looks on paper. If you're just going through the motions, if you're just existing while the hours and days pass instead of experiencing life, you will rob yourself of countless opportunities for joy, pleasure, satisfaction, and wonder. And because our brains are naturally predisposed to finding problems and danger and potential threats, you will still notice all the negative, scary, ugly parts of life. And that just makes for a terrible time. So let's go back to my hiking analogy. So again, it's your turn to hike up the mountain trail. And let's say this time you are headed for the forest view because that's what you want. And you've heard lots of people say that it's the most beautiful trail that you can take up the mountain. And so you feel good about your choice. But you spend most of your hike looking at an old-fashioned paper map, because remember, cell phones don't work here. So you spend most of your hike with this giant unfolded paper map, like right in front of your face. So you're looking at the map instead of observing your environment. And the only thing you really notice is how uncomfortable you are. You're hot and you're thirsty and your legs are burning from the steep incline and the uneven path, and there's a pebble in your shoe, and you are just not enjoying the hike at all. And finally, you make it to the top and you take in this view of the forest, and you decide you don't know what all the fuss is about because it's just a bunch of trees. In fact, they're the same trees that you can see from the ground if you're standing on that side of the mountain. But because you were just going through the motions of hiking, you didn't really experience the hike. So you missed out on all of the beautiful flowers and all of the cute little animals and the fresh, clean air, and maybe even the calming sound of the nearby gurgling stream. You missed out on everything that actually makes the hike beautiful. My friend, life works much the same way. If you're focused on just getting there, if you're focused on just going through the motions of walking your way out to success, you can't possibly enjoy the journey because traveling is hard. So now I've given you a few reasons why you might be feeling like you hate your life, even though it's great and it seems perfect on paper. So what's the next step? What do you do now? Well, it depends. Always, right? It depends on which of these scenarios that I just went through resonates most with you. If you're hating your life because you've been focused on someone else's idea of success, then your next step is to figure out what kind of success you want, and then take the first, simplest, most reasonable step that you can think of that will move you in that direction. Or if you've been hating your life because you've been denying your true self, if you've been pretending to be someone that you're not, then it's time to start showing up in your life more authentically. Take those parts of yourself that you've been hiding and shoving deep down and look for ways to be more of that person on purpose. And if you've been hating life because you've been disconnected, because you've just been going through the motions, then your next step is to be more mindful. Get present and tune into your body and into your feelings. Tune into your environment and even your desires. Once you start experiencing your success more deeply, your next move will become clear. And of course, if you're feeling like you genuinely have no idea how to do any of this, or if you're still not quite sure what feels off about your great life, I'm here to help, right? Remember, you never have to do any of this alone. So you can always book a free sales call with me to talk about my one-on-one coaching services and let me help you redefine success into something that will help you love life. So that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the episode, as always, and I will see you back here next week on the podcast. I'll be back with another juicy, yummy episode. In the meantime, go do something that makes you hate your life just a little bit less. All right? Peace. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Life Edit Project podcast. I'd love to hear what your favorite moment or key takeaway was from this conversation. You can send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter to let me know. My handle is @LifeEditProject, all one word, in all the places. My social media is linked up in the show notes to make it easy for you. Holla at your girl. I'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, don't just stay busy with the life you have. Get busy creating the life you want.